Declaration of Principles and State Policies. Democratic and Republican State. The Philippines is a democratic and republican state. Sovereignty resides in the people, and all government authority emanates from them. So what is the meaning of democratic and what is the meaning of republican? Democratic is understood as participatory democracy. It contemplates instances where the people would act directly and not through their representatives. How about republican? All government authority emanates from the people and is exercised by representatives chosen by the people. Renunciation of war. The Philippines renounces war as an instrument of national policy, adopts the generally accepted principles of international law as part of the law of the land, and adheres to the policy of peace, equality, justice, freedom, cooperation, and amity with all nations. Renunciation of war. So the power of the Congress is to declare the existence of a state of war, and not the power to declare war. Congress has no authority to declare a war of aggression, as the Philippines renounces war as an instrument of national policy. How about the meaning of adoption of generally accepted principles of international law? The provision speaks of the adoption of the generally accepted principles of international law as part of the law of the land and not of the law of the nation, in order to avoid any conjecture that the generally accepted principles of international law are incorporated into Philippine law with the force of constitutional provisions. Now, there are two methods of making international laws part of the local laws of the Philippines: the doctrine of incorporation and the doctrine of transformation. By virtue of the doctrine of incorporation, the courts have applied the rules of international law in a number of cases, even if such rules had not been previously subject of statutory enactments, because these generally accepted principles of international law are automatically part of our own laws. On the other hand, under the doctrine of transformation, generally accepted principles of international law are localized through legislation. Another state principle is civilian supremacy. Civilian supremacy teaches the supremacy of the sovereign Filipino people in line with the principle that sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them, and this supremacy is at all times supreme over the military. The armed forces is the protector of the people and the state. This means that if the President of the Republic of the Philippines or high government officials of the land happens to be the ones who are committing abuses while in the performance of their duties, the armed forces of the Philippines is obliged under Section 3 of Article 2 of the 1987 Constitution to protect the people of the state against their abuses. It is ensured by the installation of the President, the highest civilian authority, as the Commander-in-Chief of all the armed forces of the Philippines, and the requirement that the members of the AFP or the Armed Forces of the Philippines to swear to uphold and defend the Constitution, which is the fundamental law of the civil government. Compulsory military and civil service, protection of people and state. The prime duty of the government is to serve and protect the people. The government may call upon the people to defend the state, and in the fulfillment thereof, all citizens may be required under conditions provided by law to render personal, military, or civil service. Now, the right of the government to require compulsory military service is a consequence of its duty to defend the state, and is reciprocal with its duty to defend life, liberty, and property of the citizen. Existence of state is more paramount than individual rights, such as the right against involuntary servitude and freedom of religion. This was held in the case of People versus Lagman. Another state principle is peace and order and general welfare. The maintenance of peace and order, the protection of life, liberty, and property, and the promotion of the general welfare are essential for the enjoyment by all the people of the blessings of democracy. Another state principle is separation of church and state. The separation of church and state shall be inviolable. The government must act for secular purposes and in ways that have primarily secular effects. The state cannot compel the acceptance of any creed or the practice of any form of worship. Under the principle of separation of church and state, there are two ecclesiastical controversies which are beyond the province of the courts of justice, namely doctrinal and disciplinary, such as excommunication. As held in the case of Iglesia ni Cristo versus Court of Appeals, under our constitutional scheme, it is not the task of the state to favor any religion by protecting it against an attack by another religion. Vis-a-vis religious differences, the state enjoys no banquet of options. However, the command that church and state be separate is not to be interpreted to mean hostility to religion. The state need not be hostile or against religion.